This paper deals with students' employment expectations in view of the outcome of their higher education studies. It is a paper that uses empirical data from Greece. Expectations are a complex and dynamic social phenomenon since they are closely linked to human behavior, while the practical utility of any theory depends on various factors, such as the personality of the individual. From a managerial organizational behavior perspective, according to Vroom's expectancy theory 1964, expectations are developed according to the intensity or value of the preference, the expectation of performance. From a social psychological perspective, the expectation states theory recognizes two approaches to achieving a goal, namely either through a collective orientation or a task orientation. A collective orientation is where individuals recognize the importance of collectivity in achieving a given goal, whereas a task oriented individual achieves the goal without necessarily involving others. Students are the main pillar of higher education. Its image, as well as its contribution to the economy, depends on its ability to help students fulfill their potential, that is, to prepare students for a role in the work environment to which they aspire and are capable in terms of knowledge, competence, skills, and experience. The involvement and integration of students in a higher education institution presupposes the pursuit of certain needs or expectations that include material and non-material benefits. Based on the above, the purpose of this paper is, first, to investigate undergraduate student attitudes and perceptions regarding the position they expect to have in the labor market, and b, how their competencies and skills were developed by their higher education department in view of the outcome of their studies. It is also aims to ascertain whether or not Greek higher education is linked with the labor market in Greece. Finally, based on the empirical results, this study gives recommendations to policymakers that would positively enhance the interrelations between higher education and the labor market without downgrading or altering the quality of the educational services provided, and thus make a significant step towards getting the right people in appropriate positions at the appropriate time. As Greece strives to recover from the negative consequences of the worldwide economic crisis that struck in 2008, adjust to the structural changes in the labor market, and address the increased uncertainty overshadowing existing and future employees, it is crucially important to gain a better understanding of undergraduate students' expectations from their higher education departments, as these students constitute a major source of a country's innovation and creativity. The present study is motivated by a previous relevant study which took place in Greece in 2013. While there are indeed many studies concerning the demand for higher education, only a limited amount of research has been conducted on the expectations of students from their undergraduate studies and on their job satisfaction. With particular reference to the methodology, anonymous questionnaires were administered to undergraduate students in their final year at higher education institutions in the Athens area during the current academic year. In particular, 200 anonymous questionnaires were distributed to undergraduate students in the final year in higher education institutions in the Athens area, and of those, 133 were used for analysis, a response rate of 66.5%. The questionnaire contained 46 questions that covered student personal and professional characteristics, such as gender, students' perceptions regarding the development of competencies from their higher education department, students' perceptions regarding the link between their department and their labor market, as well as the level of the departmental assistance in finding them a job through the careers office, students' expectations towards their future employment and salary. With reference to the results, among the survey sample, 52.6% were women and 47.4% were men. When the respondents were asked if they would choose to continue their studies after graduation, the majority, who were positive, indicated that the primary reason for their decision was it is not easy to find a job solely with a bachelor's degree, 21.8%, while 12% stated a desire to acquire a specialization as a reason for continuing their studies. Other reasons given for students to continue their studies at postgraduate level were for social prestige, 8.3%, and to have better working conditions, 13.5%. For those students who stated that they will not continue their studies after graduation because they prefer to look for work, the primary reason for this decision was that they want to have their own income and not to be supported by their parents, 45.1%, while 5.3% stated that they have financial problems and have to work. Regarding how confident they were of their decision, 45.9% answered moderately and 32.3% answered very much. When students were asked in which sector they would like to work after completing their studies, the majority of students stated the private sector, 67.7%, while 27.8% want to find a job in the public sector. When they were asked about the likelihood that the job they will find after completing their studies will be relevant to the subject of their studies, the majority, 42.9%, answered moderately. Also, when asked if they believed that their future job would reflect their educational level, about the same percentage, 43.6%, answered moderately. However, when asked if they believed that the remuneration from their work after completing their studies would reflect their educational level, the majority of 33.1% answered a little. With particular reference to students' satisfaction with the level of their undergraduate studies, the majority, 46.9%, answered very much. When asked how much they considered that the curriculum of their department was based on the needs of the labor market and the requirements of companies, 40.6% of students answered moderately and 22.6% answered very much. Regarding the extent to which professional competencies were emphasized by the department they attended, the highest percentages indicating a major emphasis were concentrated in the professional skills of problem solving with 22.6% and communication 21.1%. In contrast, 45.9% of the sample students stated that there was little emphasis on the professional competency of team working and that in 15.8% of cases no emphasis was placed on the professional competency of leadership or on foreign languages. Based on the empirical results, it seems that the Greek university departments place much emphasis on the professional skills of problem solving and communication, but little on leadership and foreign languages. The vast majority of respondents' university departments had an internship, while when they were asked if the department's careers office, which is responsible for helping students finding a job, would make it easier to find a job after graduation, 39.8% believed that it would help moderately, 30.8% a little, 12% much, 10.5% not at all, and only 6.8% thought that it would help very much. Econometric analysis was employed for the analysis of the empirical data. Three or less econometric models were estimated in order to investigate, first, undergraduate student opinions and perceptions regarding their satisfaction with the level of their undergraduate studies. Second, their level of expectation as to whether their future employment will be relevant to their studies. And third, their level of expectation as to whether their future salary will reflect their educational level. With particular reference to the first OELS econometric model, the dependent variable was the degree of student satisfaction towards the undergraduate program of the department they attended, where respondents were asked to indicate their satisfaction as follows: 1. Not at all, 2. Little, 3. Moderately, 4. Much, and 5. Very much. The first model used the following as independent variables: the gender of the respondents, which took the value 0 for women and the value 1 for men, whether the department's careers office would facilitate the finding of work after updating their degree according to the following scale: 1. Not at all, 2. Little, 3. Moderately, 4. Much, and 5. Very much. Whether or not students' university departments have internships, which took the value 0 when the reply was no and the value 1 when yes. The extent to which their department adjusted the undergraduate program to the needs of the labor market and of enterprises according to the following scale: 1. Not at all, 2. Little, 3. Moderately, 4. Much, and 5. Very much. The two most popular professional competencies, namely problem solving and communication, with the greatest emphasis given by the departments. Students were asked to rate the given emphasis of their department to these competencies according to the scale: 1. Not at all, 2. Little, 3. Moderately, 4. Much, and 5. Very much. The competency of team working, to which the students felt there was little emphasis given by their university department, according to the following scale: 1. Not at all, 2. Little, 3. Moderately, 4. Much, and 5. Very much. Table 1 presents the results from the first OELS econometric model with a dependent variable, the degree of student satisfaction with the undergraduate program of the department they attended. Results from Table 1 indicate that all variables are statistically significant at the level of 1%. The exception is a variable of gender, which is statistically significant at the level of 5%. The regression model performed very well, since the R-square adjusted was 0.664. A very important variable for the level of student satisfaction from their department undergraduate program is whether or not the department has an internship program, since according to the results, when the department has an internship program, students are more likely to have a satisfactory perception of the department's undergraduate program. When students' perception of their department's careers office is positive in terms of job finding, then the students are more likely to draw a higher level of satisfaction for the department's undergraduate program. With particular reference to a department's emphasis on professional competency in problem solving, it has a negative sign which reveals a negative correlation with a dependent variable, and perhaps this negative relationship is attributed to the fact that the internship programs are of limited duration. The department's emphasis on the other two professional competencies, namely communication and team working, reveal a positive relationship with the student satisfaction regarding the department's undergraduate program. Finally, men seem to exhibit higher levels of satisfaction than women concerning their department's undergraduate program. In the second OELS econometric model, the dependent variable was students' attitudes regarding the degree of their expectation as to whether their future employment would reflect the studies of their department, where respondents were asked to indicate their satisfaction as follows: 1. Not at all, 2. Little, 3. Moderately, 4. Much, and 5. Very much. The second model used the following as independent variables: the gender of the respondents, which took the value 0 for women and the value 1 for men; student perceptions regarding their satisfaction with the level of their undergraduate studies according to the following scale: 1. Not at all, 2. Little, 3. Moderately, 4. Much, and 5. Very much. Student perceptions as to whether their department's careers office responsible for helping students find a job would actually facilitate the finding of work after updating their degree according to the following scale: 1. Not at all, 2. Little, 3. Moderately, 4. Much, and 5. Very much. Whether or not students' university departments have internships which took the value 0 when the reply was no and the value 1 when yes. The two professional competencies emphasized the most by departments, namely entrepreneurship and communication. Students were asked to rate the emphasis given by their department to these competencies according to the scale: 1. Not at all, 2. Little, 3. Moderately, 4. Much, and 5. Very much. two professional competencies with the least emphasis given by the departments, namely leadership and foreign languages. Students were asked to rate the extent to which their department emphasized these competencies according to the scale: 1, not at all; 2, little; 3, moderately; 4, much; and 5, very much. The competencies of team working, to which the students felt little emphasis was given by their university department, according to the following scale: 1, not at all; 2, little; 3, moderately; 4, much; and 5, very much. Table 2 describes the results from the second OLS econometric model with a dependent variable, students' level of expectation as whether their future employment will reflect their studies. The results from Table 2 indicate that all variables are statistically significant. An important observation in this model is that the negative signs of the control variables have been increased in comparison to the first model. Certainly the dependence is different, but nevertheless this model performed very well, since the R-square adjusted was 0.705. According to the results, male students are more likely to expect that their future employment will reflect their studies. The higher the levels of student satisfaction with their undergraduate program, the more likely they are to expect that their future employment will reflect their studies. From the results, it is evident that the strongest influence among the employability skills on the dependent variable based on the beta coefficient is leadership, which has a negative sign. However, this negative relationship of the competency of leadership with the student's level of expectation that their future employment will reflect their studies may be attributed to the fact that leadership, according to students' responses, was a skill on which the least emphasis was put by their university departments. A negative relationship is evident for the internship programs and the dependent variable. Again, this may be attributed to the limited duration of the internship programs. In the third OLS econometric model, the dependent variable was the level of student expectation as to whether their future salary will reflect their educational level, where respondents were asked to indicate their satisfaction as follows: 1, not at all; 2, little; 3, moderately; 4, much; and 5, very much. The third model used the following as independent variables: the gender of the respondents, which took the value 0 for women and the value 1 for men; whether or not students' university departments have an internship, which took the value 0 when the reply was no, and the value 1 when yes; the decision to continue their studies at postgraduate level, which took the value 0 when the reply was no, and the value 1 when yes; whether they believe that their future work will reflect their educational level according to the following scale: 1, not at all; 2, little; 3, moderately; 4, much; and 5, very much. The public sector as a sector they would prefer to work in after the completion of their studies, which took the value 0 for no and the value 1 for yes. Those students who wished to continue their studies because they stated that they cannot find a job solely with a bachelor's degree, which took the value 0 for no and the value 1 for yes. Those students who wished to continue their studies because they wanted to acquire a specialization, which took the value 0 for no and the value 1 for yes. Those students who wished to continue their studies to gain a better social recognition, which took the value 0 for no and the value 1 for yes. Those students who wished to continue their studies because they wanted to have better working conditions, which took the value 0 for no and the value 1 for yes. Those students who wished to continue their studies because they simply wanted another degree, which took the value 0 for no and the value 1 for yes. Those students who wished to continue their studies out of personal interest and to enrich their knowledge and skills, which took the value 0 for no and the value 1 for yes. And finally, the extent to which their department adjusted the undergraduate program to the needs of the labor market of the enterprises according to the following scale: 1, not at all; 2, little; 3, moderately; 4, much; and 5, very much. Table 3 presents the results from the third OLS econometric model with a dependent variable, the level of student expectation that their future salary will reflect their educational level. Please note that Table 3 is continued on the next slide. The results from Table 3 indicate that all variables are statistically significant, with the exception of the extent to which their department adjusted their undergraduate program to the needs of the labor market and the needs of enterprises, a variable which is on the next slide, and whether or not the department had an internship program. The third model also performed very well, since the R-square adjusted was 0.801. According to the results, men seem to be more likely to believe that their future salary will reflect their educational level. Those who want to continue their studies in postgraduate education in order to acquire specialization are more likely to expect their future salary to reflect their educational level. Finally, the variable of those who stated that they will continue their studies out of their personal interest and to enrich their knowledge has a negative relationship with the dependent variable. Perhaps the result is attributed to the fact that the choice of postgraduate programs by students who pursue only their personal development may be based only on the criterion of what I like and not what will be useful for my employment. Those who want to be employed in the public sector are more likely to expect that their future salary will reflect their educational level. This is because the reward management of the public sector is based on the formal characteristics and qualifications of the employees. It is evident from the above that professional competencies are a crucial aspect not only for the labor market but also for the effectiveness of undergraduate programs. However, employability skills should not be limited to the academic level but also consider more productive aspects. In other words, Greek university departments should not only highlight professional competencies through their academic programs but would also support them on a practical level. And this is evident from students' perceptions. Hence, higher education has a direct impact on the labor market. And for this reason, the emphasis on professional competencies in higher education without degrading the quality of academic programs must be comprehensive and not just formal. After all, many researchers argue that education is the only way to develop the economic structures of a society. What remains is for higher education to put that into practice and not focus solely on theoretical knowledge.